Hello! So today's video is going to be a process showing the creation of 2 watercolor pieces for my art licensing portfolio. And while you watch, I'm going to play an interview that I did with Katie and Ilana from Loomier. We had a really great discussion about art licensing, being an artist, how to differentiate yourself as an artist. I'm really excited for you guys to listen to it, so I'm gonna go ahead and play that now. I'll probably jump in periodically to clarify or add things where I think it's necessary, but I hope you enjoy the video.
Am I cutting out at all?
Not too bad.
Okay, yeah, sometimes my internet sucks.
That's okay. I'm also kind of out in the middle of nowhere, so my internet's probably not the best either.
Where do you live?
Well, I'm visiting my family right now in Delhi, Iowa. It's a very small town, so...
Well, I'm in Austin and I have no excuse, but the internet gods just hate me.
Katie and Ilana were kind enough to let me take their art licensing for hand letterers class. Because I'm a hand letterer, I found it really helpful, but I did want to learn a little bit more about them and how they got started in the industry, so I asked them each to give a quick biography of themselves.
I'll introduce myself. My name is Katie Johnson and I am a lettering artist, and I used to be an art director at a small advertising agency, but then I left to kind of do my own thing and start my own shop is what it was at first, and then that kind of evolved into lettering and art licensing and all sorts of fun stuff.
I'm Ilana Griffo, and also a lettering artist and a published author. And Katie and I, oddly enough, have really similar kind of backstories. I also worked as an art director and needed my creativity fulfilled in a different way, so kept doing all these side projects, and eventually they outweighed, my full-time job. So I transitioned into being an adjunct, and then after that I was like, all right, see you later, full-time job, and started working for myself.
I feel like it's really important to reinforce the narrative that you don't have to come right out of college or high school and do art as your full-time job. Like, both Katie and Ilana's stories show the transition from being in a career that's less entrepreneurial, less artist, and then finding that moment where it's your time to transition into being your own boss and creating full-time for yourself.
A couple years later, Katie and I put our heads together to do a course and then founded Loomier together, feeling like there was this void that we could fill.
I would also kind of like to hear how you guys met and what was that moment when you decided to start the company together? Was it, we're gonna quit our jobs?
This is shocking. Okay, everybody hold on to your seats. We have never met in person.
Oh my God.
We could each be catfishing each other. It'd be very elaborate, but...
I'd been following Katie, and she had posted about a class she was working on, and I wrote her and was like, I've been working on a similar one, and Katie was so kind. We both, I think, felt intimidated by each other. We're like, someone else is doing it, and we just decided to do it together, and it ended up being better than we could have imagined doing on our own. And then I remembered Katie on the phone one day. We were like, let's do another class, and then a couple weeks later she was like, I guess we're sort of starting a business together.
Well, there you have it. Katie and Ilana joining forces. Can you imagine not knowing someone, not ever meeting them, and deciding to start a business with them? I think it's kind of incredible. Now we're going to transition because I wanted to ask them a few questions and get their perspective on being a person in the creative industry. When you go to your website, you do a really good job of not deceiving anyone, but almost making it seem like you guys are best friends and you hang out on the weekends, and that's the perfect example of collaboration over competition, I think.
100%. Yeah, I was actually really kind of butthurt at first when I saw that I wasn't the only one to have the idea to do an art licensing class, which obviously makes sense, but I was in Home Depot walking around and I was so slumpy and sad, and then I was like, wait, this is so ridiculous. I talk about community over competition all the time, and I'm being the exact opposite. And so I just shifted my mindset and was we're each gonna add something so different to this class, and it's gonna be a lot more legit, and people will want to hear from 2 people over 1 person a lot more. So,
and it's been really a give a little, get a ton.
My first question for you guys was, When you think about developing your style, not just as like a licensing artist, but as an artist in general, it can be kind of difficult to feel like you have a consistent style that represents you. Like if I was to open up my portfolio without putting my face next to any of the artwork, like would someone be able to tell this is something that Lauren made?
Yeah, this is a wonderful question that comes up all the time with our students. Something that I always tell people that I actually heard from the lettering artist at House Industries, Ken Barber, is that you can't not be you even if you tried. It's a great reminder that when you're so close to your own work, you look at it with a very different lens, and the amount of scrutiny that you bring to it is very different from what somebody on the outside brings to it. In general, we found that there's a lot more continuity in people's work than they think there is, first of all, just because the way that you think in your own hand, expressing that is going to, have a consistent style in and of itself. So the best thing that we recommend to people who are having this kind of almost existential issue is to just make a lot of work. The more that comes out of you, the more you'll start to see themes coming out and styles coming out without you even trying. So I think that's a much better way to go about it than to try and force something or try to replicate a style that you see.
When you're putting yourself out there as an artist, it can feel really vulnerable because it's your work. And so the only way to get better and to feel more confident, even though you're always going to grow and always going to change and sort of, not that you'll always be in search of your voice, but you'll always be refining your voice. And so just to make, even if it's not making for sale or making for a specific thing, just even having a creative practice, just like you would practice anything else, I think that's the best way to keep that inner voice at bay.
Your art is almost kind of like you making what you like and you making what you want to see in the world. And so you almost can't help but eventually start to develop your own style if you just keep making more work. It's like when you are picking out your clothes in the morning, you pick out what you want to wear. I feel like your art portfolio slowly kind of becomes like a version of your closet where you're curating exactly what you want to see every single day.
Yeah, that's a great analogy, actually. We might use that. It is interesting, though, because there's an added layer on top of all of that with art licensing, because you do have to, consider what's going to sell and what other people like on top of just what your style is. So that's it makes this question just a tiny bit more complicated when you add that to the mix. But I don't think that when you're going into art licensing, you need to feel like you have to sell out. I think it's more about finding the clients that will fit and appreciate your style rather than you bending to them as much. You just need to keep in mind when you decide whatever kind of market you want to aim for, that you are considering some of the trends or things that sell better in that market while you're kind of mixing your own style in with that.
Actually, in a weird way for me and probably for a lot of other people, the restraint in the idea of the nature of how licensing portfolios look as opposed to client work is actually helpful in some ways, because it helps rein you in and you don't feel like you have this endless amount of choices. You almost have this little set of restraints that you can start from and then build your creativity on top of that, instead of just having to make something and you're not quite sure what you're making because you don't have a direction to go in.
I think you guys said it perfectly. People don't talk about it enough, I feel like. Yeah, you guys nailed it.
My next question was thoughts on licensing as a side income for someone who maybe doesn't do art as a full-time job.
I feel like I could answer this in a sarcastic way, but then you guys maybe wouldn't laugh. So the thing is, licensing is a long game, and so you have to be like committed enough because payment takes like 18 months. You know, it's not one of those things where like you make a sale and it's done. It really is like a lengthy process, and so the nature of licensing is that artists want or buyers want to look through a big portfolio, but you know, everyone can make it work for them in their own way. But I would say that it really does kind of deserve, just like anything, deserves more than just a little bit of attention. However, that does not mean you can't do it on top of a full-time job. It just means you have to have a plan, and just like with anything, you need to have time carved out to dedicate to your craft, regardless of if it's a side hustle or one of your income streams. Whatever you do, I think it's just important to kind of do it fully, and that can mean so many different things.
That makes sense, and I think it's one of those things where you kind of talked about it in the class, you get out of it what you put into it. So if you're only willing to make a few pieces, you're probably not going to see the return as if you would putting together a really dense portfolio of work, and through that you would find your style and then hopefully kind of find your niche. I was also thinking about someone who has a 9-to-5 job in a completely different industry may find art licensing appealing because it's sort of more of a passive income stream and you can do it in your free time. And if you have an agent, you pretty much just get to put together a portfolio and then you can almost kind of just let it stir and see what happens with it.
Katie and I talk about passive income a lot, and I think as a generation, we don't really have a lot of patience. You know, we expect things to like kind of flip over really fast. And licensing can be a phenomenal passive income stream. But just like any passive income stream, and you already said it, is you get out what you put in. And so if you just put your work out there and expect your agent to sell it or expect someone to come buy it, then you're just not going to have the reward as if you put your heart and soul into it. And I think anyone who is going to pursue any creative side hustle really is doing it because they have passion for it. And so it's really just learning tools and systems to make it easier and more fun so that you can focus on the pieces that are really special to you.
The great thing about art licensing too, when you're building a portfolio, like actually licensing that art can be a long game, but I've seen a lot of our students, and it's happened with both Ilana and I as well, like when you're building your portfolio and you like post these pieces on Instagram, a lot of times you'll get inquiries along the way that might be, you know, freelance inquiries that are like, oh, I saw this licensing piece that you made. I don't necessarily need to license this piece, but I see you can do this style. And, you know, there are things that come out of just creating art for anything.
I love what you said. It's almost like you can dip your toe into the art industry by starting with licensing, and that is a good way to showcase what you're capable of and then go from there.
Yeah, we talk about it all the time, and it's funny you said dipping your toe because we call it double dipping all the time, and we're always telling our students like the more that you can double up on the ways that you can use whatever art that you're making, the better. And art licensing is amazing because you can make multi-purpose pieces really easily that you could literally just sell this exact piece, or you could use it as an example of what you can do.
It may be discouraging initially for someone to realize like art licensing is probably not going to be your entire income if you're an ambitious person, but it can be a really great way to like add frosting on top of your income with art that you're already really producing and putting the effort into making.
You know, we always talk about how you should have 7 income streams. This is like a thing, is that millionaires have 7 different income streams. And as an artist, we can have 7 different ways we sell our work or make money. And it's sort of just like, if you could see my hands, I'm like pulling from the sky on this side and pulling from the sky on this side and pulling. And it's like when things, ebb and flow, you can just pick one up. And the great thing about licensing is that the return can keep giving and keep giving and keep giving. But then, if you're like, okay, well, it's not giving right now, I can try and sell this way, or I can make art because I just want to, and that can turn into your best project yet.
So my last question for Katie and Ilana has to do with the thing we all want to know. Maybe we lay awake at night thinking about, how can I bring something special and unique to a place where it seems like everyone is more talented than me, everyone seems more creative than me? I feel like my work doesn't have this cohesiveness that everyone else's does. One of the things you mentioned at the end of the class that I really appreciated was that it's important to not make your artwork look like everyone else's portfolio. That in and of itself makes sense, but I would love to hear your guys' specific advice on how to be different and how to carve out a little niche for yourself in not just the art licensing industry, but the art industry as a whole.
You just have to make so much work. I think part of it is to stop looking for inspiration and just create. Becky Simpson had a really great quote the other day. I'm actually going to see if I can find it while I'm while I'm saying this, but she basically, oh, I found it. She has like a sketchbook, and she doesn't share it typically. Maybe it'll turn into something, but every day, just like she would, drink water or stretch, her muscles, every day she draws something in her sketchbook, even if it's like 2 minutes, with no intention other than to like flex her creative muscles. And she said, we don't have to prove something when we draw. It doesn't have to be personal or mean anything more than just lines on a page. Go forth and draw lines today. Finding inspiration is great, but at some point you have to just draw and see what happens.
Making all that work and seeing what trends start to emerge. Like, I didn't go into becoming a letterer knowing that I would like gravitate towards ornamentation, and that just kind of emerged over time. And I took a step back after I'd created enough work to have patterns emerge, and I was like, okay, now how do I explain my work to other people? How do I talk about this in a way that like gives me some kind of niche or like easy way to explain it? And that's when I started saying, oh, I'm a lettering artist with like an affinity for ornamentation and flourishing. And then I was able to kind of lean into that after the fact. I don't feel like bound to that. Like, I don't feel like everything I make has to fit into that exact category, but I just enjoy it, and I tend to go in that direction. So when we're working with our students and they're trying to find something similar how they can talk about their own work, a lot of times it just helps to have somebody else come in and put their eyes on your work and say the things that are jumping out to me that are patterns, or things that are descriptive words about your work are. And just having that extra person come in can sometimes really open your eyes to things that were like there all the time,
That's the light bulb moment I feel like every artist wants to have, is the moment where they realize, oh, this is my thing, or at least for the moment, this is kind of their thing. So I love the advice of having someone that doesn't maybe necessarily always see what you're making, just look at a group of your pieces and say, oh, like, this is what's standing out to me. As individuals, we're setting such high expectations for every time we sit down and create a piece that it has to already fit within these like bound set of like, this is my style. But if you've only made 20 things, you probably haven't even figured out what that is yet. So you almost just have to just make a bunch of stuff that no one even looks at. And then you are able to say, oh, this one piece that I made out of 20, this is kind of what feels like I want my other work to feel like.
You have to keep making, and you're gonna eventually see common threads, and then maybe one day you'll be sick of one of those threads and try something new. And I know I do this with Katie all the time. I'm like, what do you think of this? And how would you describe this? And it's really helpful to have someone come in and just kind of look with fresh eyes.
Okay, well, this has been so awesome. I really enjoyed getting to chat with you guys, meeting you virtually. Do you have any parting thoughts before we sign off today?
Just like have fun, keep creating and make for the purpose of just making.
I like that parting thought. I'm gonna put my eggs in that basket.
After this interview, I was just so like jazzed. I was like, I want to make stuff. I'm so excited. If you're interested in learning more about art licensing, if you're a hand lettering artist, they have a really, really great class. I will of course make sure to provide all of the information down below in the description box if you do want to join their class. I personally do recommend it if you're someone who is looking to add another source of income and you're already making art, or if you're someone who's looking to kind of dip your toe into the creative industry. Wow, okay, I know that was a really long video. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to that interview. I hope you enjoyed watching me do some watercolor. I haven't sat down on my desk and painted for a really long time, and when I decided I wanted to create a few pieces for my portfolio while this interview played, it became a really great excuse for me to pick up my paintbrushes and experiment a little bit. So I was hoping these pieces would kind of be reminiscent of like a fabric pattern or something like that, but truly it was really just a way for me to explore a different style of art that I haven't played with a lot. I'm gonna be uploading a studio vlog probably in the next couple of weeks. I'm taking some time to go spend with my family, and while I'm in Colorado, I will be editing that video and hopefully posting it very soon for you guys, because I've been working on a lot of cool projects and I'm really excited to share them with you. So if you don't already, Follow me on Instagram. I say this always at the end of my videos because I don't post on YouTube very often anymore. I'm very busy, and if you want to keep up with me, I'm posting almost daily on my Instagram stories, so please do check it out. If you like to keep up with me, if you like to see what I'm working on, Instagram is the best place for you to do that. Again, thank you for watching. If you're all the way to the end of this video, you're a true fan, and I love you, and I will talk to you again very soon in my next video. Bye. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Ilana. You're awesome.